So what should we do now? We now know what not to do. What should we do? The first thing that I will want to say in your assignments, it's actually, well, it's not compulsory, but it would be very useful if you wrote how you actually gonna engage your students, how you're gonna create an environment that actually engages students in your unit. I've given examples from other students' work where in another unit a student said that children in her class received an email from the principal who asked them to produce a story, an inspiring or wonderful story for the school newsletter. So that's one way. Another way could be to actually follow up on other projects which were about, as I have shown here, were about producing a school website, which is here. I've done it in my professional development program, which I ran in Canberra with Mandarin teachers. So we created a website for children, Ni Hao Hai, which is an imaginary school I've created here to just give my teachers ideas how to do it. So basically the engagement would be to actually produce things for the website so that actually the school has a lively website, exchanges things, is relevant in the environment of the region or of the suburb, and shows connections with the community and so on. So that's another thing. And one other thing I suggested in the past was to actually, especially with smaller children, if you do not want a website, maybe online or not online, but something like a class book. So these could be sort of ways in which you could, with which you could engage students and also facilitate for the condition or allow for the condition of making your students' work actually available for others to look at and comment and so on, and have a benefit from. Okay, so now what we will be looking at is the components that are relevant for your assessment, for assignment 2. So first of all, as you know, I've always spoken about the unit focus, right? So what should be your unit focus? And very often we've been talking about if students, for example, if some of you are teaching, say, sciences or maths, you focus on the mathematical or on the scientific concept, which is not too bad. But the idea really is now, has this concept gonna be used in your unit here, which is about English teaching or teaching English or supporting the language development? So for example, the question is here, will you be in this unit teaching life cycles or the concept of cycles? Or will you be actually doing something else, which is teaching students what to do with all this information? And that's what I suggest that you'd be doing. So unit focus must be language oriented, and the assessment that would follow could be for students to actually argue the relevance of cycles, demonstrate the relevance of cycle, present something that will demonstrate the relevance of cycles, or present some sort of kind of cycle. I'm mentioning cycle because I had a discussion with one of our students enrolled in our unit, and while life cycles or any kinds of cycles are relevant, but they are more, teaching of them is more relevant for science. Here I would like to actually say how the terms that they learned in a science unit actually would be used in your language unit to not only promote or support further learning of those concepts, but also now to see how students can work with those concepts from the perspective of language development. So the tasks should be oriented towards language, and also one example that I actually give you here is actually for students to engage in projects that allow them to actually talk about these things or present them or argue for their relevance, right? So what you will be supporting is not the knowledge. So your support activities will not be oriented towards developing the knowledge of physics or the knowledge of science or the knowledge of biology, but the kinds of projects and ways of going around those projects or about those projects that further integrate the knowledge from science, but now in a kind of language-based way, which is these sort of communicative tasks. When you focus your assignments this high, your higher order skills come in straight away. So what you have here, when students argue or demonstrate relevance or present things or create things, present new things, so a concept of a cycle but in a different context, right? Students are engaging in a critical and creative thinking. They also, in order to do it well, they engage in information literacy. And while teamwork is not necessarily a language outcome or language related outcome, I'll very soon actually explain to you why I put it here, just because it's part of unit, and I'll just shortly explain it. Okay, so now in order to make these make students feel supported in their assessment projects, what we need to do is to actually think of some support resources, right? And so we have, as you can see here in this slide, we have two different things. We have support resources, and then we also have another aspect of our plan, which is planning the activities, actually, which is how the unit is going to develop through the entire 10 weeks of work, or 5 weeks of work, or 3 weeks of work, depending on how you plan it. Okay, so support resources. We are interested, remember, on language. We are interested in language outcomes, which is to present, to create, to develop, and teach students actually how to do it. Now, it's not easy because there's a lot of things that happen in text. And if you come from a background that actually taught you that texts are basically words organized in grammar, and that's what very often is taught, you might not have enough of understanding what actually happens in text in order for you to develop now informative and supportive resources to support students in their assessment task. But there's a lot of help at hand. For example, remember how I said to you that we were talking about this Nakara unit of work, and I said it is not a best example of well-designed unit of work, but look at this right at the bottom here. The teachers have put in here a list of stuff stuff that you could use actually for creating activities supporting students in thinking about structuring text. Or arguing, or everything is a text, as I said before. Whether you argue, demonstrate, present something, or create something, you basically, if you do it with language, you're producing a text. Arguably, some people actually high in academia would think that painting is a text too, because everything is about it becomes ultimately reconstructed into some form of meaning. But what I'm pointing to you here, that we're not going to throw the baby with the bathwater, and I suggest that despite of whatever apprehensions I might have about applying too literally Bloom's taxonomy to teaching or to learning, because it's outmoded, it has been criticized, and it's important for me to say it to you. There is a lot of good stuff in here, which I think we need to keep, because I couldn't produce it today or even in a month's time. I would have to actually spend a long time thinking about it. So there's a lot of stuff that we could use actually to think about how we could actually what aspects in the task of creating text we could support through our learning resources. So we've got these elements here. What else do we have? Well, other than Bloom's taxonomy, we have curricular outcomes. In many of your assignments, I have actually marked, I have written, every time you wrote curricular outcomes, I wrote, how did you support it? How would you support it? How would you support it? And exactly, curricular outcomes are not just about assessment. They are actually about, when you actually scan curricula, different curricula, I don't really mind which one, use as many as necessary to actually inspire you. So you look for a range of aspects about students, about the kinds of learning qualities that you need to support in order for students to complete these assignments tasks. So you look in curricular outcomes for ideas. What else is happening there? What else can I add to my resource? What else can I put in there? So resource is not about teaching 1 + 1 = 3, meaning if I give them this and if I give them that, then they will learn something. It is about facilitating exploration across different aspects of texts that might be relevant for this particular project, that looks maybe at the concept of cycle, this is why we're using the collaboration with our science teacher, but now from the perspective of language. So we look into Bloom's taxonomy for ideas of how to break down students' assessment task into support resources that students can actually use to see how things are actually done in text or with text. So we use curricular outcomes for ideas. What else do we use? Remember in lecture 3, I have actually produced this graph. This looks like an animal more than anything to me. But I thought to myself, even if we were to develop tools or resources which are to support students in actually appreciating text, right? Because the idea is actually for our students not just to produce to just read a text, which is a very conventional and traditional and uninspiring model of teaching. What we want children is when they read a text is actually use it as a way of learning or expanding their knowledge about the text and about the kinds of tools that make the text actually wonderful. There are reasons why people read particular texts and why these texts are on our lists of readings, because they are actually language-wise, they are wonderful. They are a wonderful resource for actually being in English. So I have written out here aspects that actually you could then break down into language tools and into examples from different websites and from using different pictures and different movies of how to actually introduce students to looking at text from the perspective of, for example, tools expressing mystery. Yeah, what kinds of language tools is the author using to actually make this mood of mystery come across as such? What would it be? Well, things are murky. I don't know enough English, but you do. So there will be words and that will be actually describing this kind of that will be giving the reader this kind of passing to the reader this kind of mood. The same things, just good, bad things. Bad things are usually black, good things are usually pink. So tools, what language tools you so the idea here is for you to just see the focus. There are different kind of foci that I have identified that are present in text and can be further this is not even unpacked, this is just an orientation. This is what I wanted to see in assignment 1, but in assignment 2 I would like you to tell me, for example, if you want to teach children to create a story, then children have to learn how to appreciate a story, what's in the story to be appreciated, and what kinds of elements they'll be playing with. So you need to create resources that enable children to break down text into separate elements so that they can learn how empathy is, for example, created and how it's not created, how different types of what language is used to describe different personalities, what different tools are used to describe humor, to describe emotions and so on. So you actually get my point. Now I created here another thing. If students are actually writing, say, different types of text like persuasion or arguing or whatever different genre, you might actually need also some clues here. So on top of this lower level of words use, you have higher level, which is different styles. So for different styles, determining how to present the arguments. Okay, so you'll be you can actually develop a resource that will teach children how to create, how to compare how languages use, different language tools are used when children, for example, present an argument at in an informal context, like to parents of their friends, and also at school. So maybe there will be different language tools required for in that, and it will be very important for children to actually be exposed to it. So what is happening here, by using all these different categories, you actually get a bit of a map of how to go about constructing a learning or a language resource. But at the same time, what you do, you enable students or your pupils to look at the text now differently. They will be seeing so many things dancing or happening in those texts. They are no longer about this person went to the house and she saw a wolf and the wolf had big ears and the wolf wanted to eat her. It's a kind of plain and very uninspiring way of looking at stories or any other texts. What we want them to see is what's happening in those sentences, what's happening at the level of structure, what were the alternatives that authors could use, and they didn't. So why is that? Because maybe they wanted to use a different style. And so on. So you can see different sort of categories here that can sit on top of this. So this will be more detailed. This is a bit higher. I have produced some other lists here I've given you to actually think of different aspects that you might actually support when creating your resources, your learning resources, or at least creating a diagram about how you would support and then what kind of things would be there. Here, for example, in Wikipedia, I have found all of these things, more than you need. Now you know about synonyms, you know about antonyms, you know about allusions, ambiguity, but you probably don't know about merism. Well, I don't. So you know about proverbs. Pathos would be nice to actually. So you've got a link here. You might actually click on. Well, this is just a picture, but once you go to the website and you find these examples, you might click on them and actually explore what's underneath and how you could actually support, if needed for your particular unit of work, how you could support students in exploring how these different devices function in text so that they could actually make use out of them. What do I have here? And then last but not least, right? Is it how we say it? What do I have here? Online ready-made games. Yes, make use out of them, but I do not actually promote their use as central, like, how can I put it? What I'm saying is, as teachers, when you have a particular objective, which is to support students in an activity like this, and as relevant to a concept like cycles or what other students, kindness, right? What I would like you to do is actually, and I strongly believe that's the case, is actually you need to produce your own resources with compare contrast examples so that to support students in creating these assignments. And then if you find anything else online, I produced here an example of my database, but I am aware you know that there are many other databases and some with wonderful resources. That would be probably more as additional, not as pivotal or central to your design. Because if you actually create your own resources, you can put more in, you can ask other colleagues of yours what else should go there, and so on. And you may not even ask what else, but how can I make best use out of these elements that are in bloom? How can I make best use out of this? How can I make best use out of that? And obviously in this assignment you're not gonna exhaust the topic. In fact, let me suggest you will be updating your resource for the next 20 years, because that's what it is. Once you have your own resource for supporting students in attending to assignment task of this kind, what happens with each year, with which semester you, or with which each time you run this particular unit, you get more ideas and you can add stuff there. And that's why it's so useful to have your own resources, because not only you can reuse them and sometimes repurpose them, but not only you can reuse them, you add to them and they become richer and bigger. And let me say that and it's very important to collaborate on these resources with other people, because even other English teachers, because a resource of this kind is not truly yours, although you can take it with you to another school as you move up the ladder or around Australia. It actually belongs to the school. So once you create it, you can actually run professional development programs on actually how to use it. Isn't it interesting? Once you create something intellectually worthwhile and you run it in class and you learn how to use it in class, you can actually pass it on to other people. And as you do it, you actually exercise your own leadership in your field as a teacher. So once we actually have covered the resource, I've got some other slide here, I didn't mention it. This one, so it's even a higher level of categorizing thoughts about what happens with text and how to actually work with text, and what you don't have to use it. This is probably high school or university, but I'm just mentioning that just in case some of you want to explore it and some aspects of it you will find relevant. So these things are links. So if you click on it, I've taken them from Wikipedia, so once you click on them, when you run the PowerPoint, they will be active. Okay, so once you actually have identified and designed your support resources and identified what will be there and how you will construct them, the last element in your assignment will be planning activities. I mean, obviously you might mention other aspects of the design, but these are the things that I really want to see, because if you then liaise with other teachers or you do other things, at least you have a very clear structure of what is it that you actually are aiming for in this unit of work. So when planning activities, what's very important is to actually enable class activities, which is a whole class activity, group activities, and then also individual activities. Each of them does different things. Now, from experience, I use class activities, for example, when I want to actually introduce students to a unit of work. So however I do it, and however seductive we have to be or inspiring, that's the time to use a whole class activity. Another context where I use whole class activities is, for example, when I want to draw all students' awareness to particular regularities. So if you, for example, when you work with your support resources, the likelihood is that your students will not know how to work with them. So before you actually make those resources available to them on an individual basis, we're talking 23rd century, with each student having their own iPad and their own computer. What I'm saying is, first, as a whole class activity, play with students and make them see how what is in that resource is relevant to the project that they are actually being engaged in. So in that way, they actually learn how to work with those resources. So okay, so this is about engaging students in the unit of work and also generating shared awarenesses about particular regularities. Group, obviously it's not as simple as it seems. Very often people think, oh, we just put kids together and they will create something. This is wrong. What is really required, that sooner or later, and better sooner than later, we teach students the ethics of group work. And that's why I actually put here, as you can see, this aspect of teamwork. It might not be relevant for this assignment, but it's relevant for me to say it here, because someone has to say it sometime within your degree structure. Group work has to be such that you should think of group work as a situation when you are actually in a workplace. Imagine you're in a workplace, there's 3 of you as a team or 4 of you as a team. Each of you earns $100,000, and as a group, what would you do? One person sits there and develops the whole thing, or 2 people develop a whole project, and 1 person is daydreaming and still getting $100,000, right? So that's not right, actually. So what we will want to do is to introduce children to a way of working in groups where the group meets. The group actually has a process of work, which is they identify the problem, identify aspects of a problem. Each individual takes the problem, spends some time working on it. Then each member of the group brings their work back to the group discusses it and moves on. Now, this is a kind of process which allows everyone to actually do their best while also benefit from working with other team members. Obviously, you would want to have moments in your unit of work where actually one group presents aspects of their work to other groups or to the entire class, well before even the project is finished. That's very important. So you can see now how the individual activities are actually resolved. They are part of the group work actually. So the individual has space to work on his or her own, but it's not left to his own devices after they've taken responsibility over some aspect of group work. Then they bring it into the group, and therefore with the group they can resolve and see the relevance of the achievement. So there, please do not actually fail to see these arrows. I know that students sometimes get overloaded and don't see the relevancies the way I actually hope you to see it. These arrows are very important, what it means here, and there's a reason why I have unit focus here and planning activities here. Look at this, how low I have actually curricular outcomes, pretty low. You put them straight after. You don't. Most of the time, students didn't even have a unit focus. They just had some sort of general theme, or it was really unclear what the unit was about in most of our units of work. So unit focus first, and then assessment straight after, so that we actually know what is it that we're actually going to support in this unit of work. And what we're going to support is students in the project learning how to complete a project of this kind, which is to demonstrate, argue, and so on. Higher order skills, then support resources, very important, and your support resources are drawn on different lists, doing different things, so that you can actually be aware that there's so much more happening in the text than just vocabulary and grammar. And I have to tell you that I just hope that not a single unit of work in assignment 2 will just say to me that we're going to do the vocabulary and we're going to look at grammar. This would be just so out of place. It's really time to stop thinking that text is just words and grammar, because for as long as we perpetuate this model, when we're not actually aware that texts are cultural artifacts, and that means that all phrases in them, the way sentences or phrases are structured, they're actually structured around cultural intentions, not around words having meaning. You may not see it if you only speak English, but once you actually start speaking another language, you find out the translations don't work. Not only that, when you are in a situation like me, that my parents live in Poland, I can't actually talk about my English life in Polish because the values don't translate. The intentions don't translate, not only the sort of social structures. It's very hard. So definitely languages or texts are not words organized in grammar. Okay, so that will be all that I wanted to say for today, and I hope it will be very helpful for you when thinking about assignments. As far as assignment 2B goes, what I would like you to do is to generate your critique of other students' or appreciation of other students' PowerPoints in terms of these aspects here, because they are pivotal to the entire design. So follow the rubric. The rubric has all these 5 aspects in it as mentioned as pivotal. And if you want to mention anything else from the rubric, that's very important too. But you have seen how I assessed the Nakara unit, so you get some example. You have also got now these 5 items here organized in such a way that you can see the relationships and between them and how they link up together. So you've got another way, and you've got the rubric which just unpacks it even further. But if you can actually look at these elements in your assignment 2B, that would be probably most I actually look for, will be looking for. Thank you very much.